Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I decided that I would do a Q&A video today. There have been a lot of questions that a number of you have raised, and I had an email submission form on my website for a few months, and also some of you have emailed me or sent me messages on Instagram, or also left me comments on YouTube. So I thought I would try and answer some of those questions. Some of them may have already been answered before, but I thought I would address them in this video. The first question I have received is the common misconceptions, what people seem to think about me. This is something that I get a lot of questions on, and some people think that I don't write with my pens. Some people think I only write with Viscontis. Well, there's no Viscontis in this pen tray. I only collect expensive pens. Well, I do, but equally I have a lot of inexpensive pens as well. That I am a collector only. Well, I do collect pens, but I do write with my pens. So for me, there is a distinct difference there. I only go for bling pens. Well, some of the pens I go for may be considered bling. A lot of the pens that I would consider, like the Sakura Nagar, is more of a work of art. And I don't buy cheap pens. Well, I do buy cheap pens, and I actually have a load of cheaper pens. I have like TWSBI Diamond 580 ALs. I also have other cheap pens, like some pen BBS pens. So to raise that comment on whether or not I actually only buy expensive pens, I think you can probably see there that I buy a lot of different pens across all of the range of price brackets, whether or not it's a demonstrator, whether or not it's a Mackie pen, whether or not it's just a resin pen. So there are lots of different pens there that I do add to my collection. The next question I get is, why do you write with your pens? Isn't that a sacrilege, writing with a pen over £1,000 or $1,000? Well, not at all. As far as I'm concerned, a car is built meant to be driven. Many a Mackie artist or pen maker will say that they feel quite upset if they find a pen is not going to be used and just sit on a shelf. I personally wouldn't buy a car, have it delivered on a transporter, and just add it to my collection and store it in a garage. Clearly though, there are some people that would do just that, but for me, that's just not for me. A pen was designed and made to be written with. So personally, I will write with all of my pens, no matter how cheap or how expensive my pens are. The next question is, how do I choose which pens to collect and which pens not to collect? So, for me, this is actually an easy process. I first look to see what pens are out there and what pens I like the look of. If I don't like the look of the pen to start with, then I'm not going to buy it. And to be honest, I think that is really what a lot of us are like when we buy our pens. So I wouldn't be buying a pen that I don't like the look of. So I always buy and collect what I like the look of. There's also an element of how the nib writes, and mostly it falls down to looks. However, if I know how a nib writes, for instance, I know how, say, the Pelican nibs write, I know how the Armando Simoni Club nibs write, I know how these Yovo nibs write, and the Omas nibs as well. So I will buy a pen based on the looks because I know how that nib writes. There are other nibs that I will, or other pens that I will buy, like this Danny Trio, that I'd never written with a Danny Trio pen before, but I love the design of this pen so much that I decided that I would buy this pen. And this is an eyedropper pen, and I'll show you the nib here. And I love this pen. I'm not that 100% keen on the nib, purely because it's more of a fine nib, and I just don't like fine nibs. But I do love the pen. So there are elements of risk when you're looking to buy a pen, that sometimes you buy a pen and it may not be the pen that you like. And I think we all have had that experience, at least with one pen, if not multiple pens. I do still love writing with this nib. It's just I would much prefer maybe a medium or a broad nib on that pen. And maybe I will do at some point. Maybe I will get the chance to swap that nib out. But for me, it's really, what pens do I collect? What pens do I not collect? It's really down to the pen and how it looks, and also the writing experience as well. The next question is, how do I decide which pens to ink up? Now, that is a very good question. For me, I like matching my ink colours to the pen colours, or pen colours to the ink colours. So for me, a lot of the time when I'm choosing which pen to ink up, it's more about which colour ink I want to write with. So for instance, if I wanted a brown ink, I would probably pick an Arco Brown, or maybe a Classic Pens LB5. If I wanted a more greener ink, maybe Diamine Marine, then I would ink up this Atelier Lusso, and that's a Carina. So it really depends on which pen and which ink that I want to ink up. Now, there are other pens like this pen, which is the Visconti Camelot, and it's a silver pen, so I will ink that up with whatever ink I like. Now, I have, in the very early days when I got this pen, I inked it up with a specific ink, and I like writing with that ink all of the time. So, for me, it's really about the ink, or the ink colour, but there is also an element of the pen. So, for me, I know that this Visconti Camelot writes exquisitely well. It has an 18 karat gold nib, it's a medium nib, it's a little bit bouncy, it's quite wet, and for me, whenever I write with this pen, I love writing with it. So for me, I may pick up that pen and ink that pen up because I remember, I have that muscle memory, and I remember how that pen wrote. Likewise, I know how Armando Simoni Club pens write. They write very wet, and I like the writing experience. So sometimes it is down to the pen, but equally, sometimes it's down to the colour of the ink that I want to write with. So the next question that I have received is, how do I choose which pens to bring into rotation? And again, that is very similar to which pens to ink up. It really does depend on the pen. I love these Armando Simoni Club pens. I love how they write. I love a super wet nib. So if I have a pen and I'm looking through my pen drawers, and I know that there's a pen that is maybe a extra fine or fine nib, which I don't quite tend to gravitate to a lot, or it's a dry writing nib, then I probably won't write with it. So just like how I decide which pens to ink up, that's really the same question, but it really comes down to muscle memory and what I remember of the experience of writing with that pen, and also what the pen looks like, because I do like to look at the pen. I do like to look at the pen in my hand when I'm writing with it. So for me, this is one of the reasons behind it. The next question that I have received is, why don't I have any Sailor pens in my collection? Well, actually, I do. So this pen here is a Sailor 1911, and this is considered the large version or the executive, and it has a Naginata Togi nib on it. So this is a special nib from Sailor. I also have this Sailor, and this is the King of Pen, and this is a Maki Raden pen, and it is the Sakura Nagar. And I also have this Classic Pens LB5, and this is actually made by Sailor. It's a King of Pen, but it was made by Sailor for Classic Pens. So I do actually have some Sailor pens in my collection. I do even have a little Fude nib, a very cheap version. But I don't have a lot of Sailors, I have to agree. The next question is, how many Viscontis do I own? Well, I got my name originally because of the amount of Viscontis I had in my collection. I have sold a few Viscontis. I sold around 20 pens in summer of 2019, and I did sell a few Viscontis, so my Viscontis reduced a little bit, but I am down to 57 Viscontis in my collection so far. And I know that's a question in terms of not only how many I have, but can we see them as well. And there will be a 3-part video series coming soon where I do show all of the Viscontis, 57 that I have in my collection to date. And that's obviously excluding the Viscontis that I did sell, but look for those videos coming soon. The next question I received was, how many Armando Simoni Club pens do I have in my collection? As of the end of 2019, I actually have 11. And I started off with this Ogiva Tribute, and then I started buying the Bologna Extras, and then also the Il Gladiatore, and this one, which is the Visconti Manhattan Arco. And I know what you're going to say is, but that's a Visconti. But yes, it is. However, you can see there it was made for ASC, so technically it is an ASC pen as well. So that's the Q&A for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any more questions that you would like answered, do please leave them down below. I'll try to answer them, and maybe I'll do another Q&A video if you like this video. So thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.